always great to talk to Rob Biertempfel. Rob, let's talk Penn State football, because if we talk about the Pirates, we're just going to depress the passengers.
Well, I got to tell you, I think the punter had a hell of a game last weekend. But
he did.
He did. He was outstanding. I mean, Barney. I'm sorry, Barney.
Barney Amore.
Yeah, what a great. I mean, the rest of the guys, I don't know. It was kind of a combination, I think, of maybe they were trying to do too much. I think they made that game harder than it had to be, even though they had dumbed down the playbook, it looked like.
Yeah.
But they were just a lot of personnel moves and early in the game. And I thought, how about just put the game away first and then, but hey, it's a win. 1-0, baby.
Yep. And 4-0 overall.
Yes,
I will say this about O'Neil Cruz, and I was talking about this earlier, Rob. It takes a while sometimes to get into your own groove. But his batting average is up 33 points from his low water mark. And he's done that in about a month to 5 weeks. Are you now seeing a level of consistency with him that is starting to develop at the end of this year?
Yeah, I think consistency and also, I guess you could say, adaptation. He's finally, taking himself. I mean, you go to the plate with a game plan and an approach, and that has to change. Sometimes you're down 0-2, or if the pitcher is consistently throwing breaking balls away and, out of the zone, you just can't keep hacking at him and expecting, something different to happen. But he is finally, I think, kind of realizing adjustments need to be made in each at-bat and is making them. Great case a couple nights ago, I guess maybe it was Monday night. He had that little, they shifted on him, and, there was that huge hole on the left side of the infield, and he kind of shortened up his swing a little bit and kind of had an 37-mile-an-hour dribbler, but it went for a single.
Yeah.
I was talking to him about that last night. I was like, is that the softest single you ever hit?
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, it is. But that's what you got to do sometimes. I mean, I think that's really... Yeah, he's got the sexy exit velo, and he can throw the ball a million miles an hour, and he can run and all this, puts balls in the river. But I think what's going to make him a great player, if that's where it ends up, is just the ability to do those little things, to recognize when you can take that dinky little single, but and eventually turn that into a run maybe, or when later in that game. He was on first base, and I think Reynolds hit a fly ball to left field for the third out. But he was, hauling butt around second base into third like it was a double off the wall. I mean, stuff like that you got to do that, it's easy to look past it in a game. But those little things are, in my mind at least, those are the separators.
And no question, because I look at, for example, a guy like Josh Donaldson. Right, he ends up in a double play the other day, and he's carrying his bat down to first. And the Blue Jays botched the play up, and they still got him because he was jogging down the first. Like, I'm sorry, but that's the example you're setting for your younger guys. And I see a guy like Cruz busting his tail around the bases. That shows me a lot.
Yeah, I think some of that, probably there's been some talking. I think we can scratch probably. There's been some talking, in the dugout and in the clubhouse, from management about the need to really bear down. And because we've seen a lot just over the past 2-3 years with this club, guys eating seeds on the field,
right.
The plays unfolding directly in front of them, or guys who take their personal communication devices perhaps onto the field. Just stuff like that. You can't afford to do that when you're on a pace to lose 100 games. And I think the idea of really bearing down has been hammered home with these guys. And on the one hand, yay, because that's a message that needs to be sent and it's needed to be enacted upon. But also, damn, you're in the major leagues now.
Yeah.
You think they would know that. But here we are.
Does Derek Shelton manage this team in 2023?
He's under contract, and I believe he will.
Okay.
Beyond that, I don't know. I mean,
Rob, I am not in any way, shape, or form blaming him. And you and I have had this conversation before. I couldn't tell you in a million years whether he's a good manager. He's never managed a meaningful game in his career.
Exactly. Yeah. And, people point to the breakdowns. I guess you could say like a breakdown of discipline, if you want to call it that, in different little ways, whether it's fundamental plays being botched or just stupid mistakes, bad optics, and you could lay some of the blame at his feet, and to a degree, deservedly so. But a lot of that stuff starts at other levels of the system, and this is something I was having lunch a couple of weeks ago with a group of scouts, and I love doing that because you learn so much.
Yes,
I just sit there and shut up and let those guys talk, and it's fabulous. And a couple of them were telling me that they had heard about several teams, but the Pirates in particular, where the coaches and the development staff is kind of sort of being told that ease up on the discipline stuff and on the my way or the highway stuff, and just let the players kind of be the players, because when Ben Cherington was hired, there was a lot made. It's a player-centric approach that they're taking. And Neil Huntington and his lieutenant, Kyle Stark in particular, really ran the minors like a boot camp.
Right. I know. I saw it here.
And that was way too far. The pendulum had swung. But now it's really swung back the other way. And, you hear stories about, I know it like in Altoona this year. When I've been there in the dugout before games talking to guys, they have like a heavyweight boxing like championship belt thing sitting there that in the dugout that I guess is part of like a home run celebration or whatever. And I believe Low A Greensboro last year had some kind of crown or something the guys would wear. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, I have no problem with enjoying the moment and celebrating a great play or something, but at the same time, I think there's a coach that we both dealt with in the past that said, act like you've been there before.
Right. Yeah.
And that's kind of how I approach it. But maybe I'm just an old man shouting in the wind. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I think there has to be a balance between the two. I want you to have fun. It's your game. But at the same time, you have to have a perspective on what you're having fun about. Are you having fun because you just did something to win? Or are you just celebrating an individual accomplishment? And to me, there's a big difference between the two, and there's too much celebrating of individual accomplishments that are not leading to wins.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean, if your individual accomplishment leads to winning, man, I'm the first one to celebrate it because, hey, quote, we don't win without you. But at the same time, if it's just an individual accomplishment and the final score was 12-2 and you had 2 home runs, I'm not jumping up and down. It meant nothing.
Yeah. You're right. It is a fine line, and I guess it just because it leads to problems. I mean, there's another team on the field, and if you're watching, that stuff unfold, now maybe if you're a pitcher or whatever, you get a little honked off, and maybe one of those fastballs comes in a little bit more, than it maybe normally would, and now maybe your catcher gets hit on the wrist and has to sit for a couple of months.
Right.
And maybe he's your former first-round pick, and that's very unfortunate. But, so, I mean, there's just ramifications to everything. And so enjoy the moment, but, geez, let's have some perspective.
You spent a lot of time looking at Altoona this year, and you're looking at the individual prospects. But there's always a little bit more to me than just that. Because are the individual prospects coming together that are actually leading to wins? Because you're in the double A, and they're okay. I mean, they're 5 games over 500. Okay,
yeah.
But how do you gauge that?
It is a little tricky in some ways because, I mean, I expected a little bit more from that club production-wise. In part because, management has said that it wants to keep guys kind of clustered so they kind of move through the system. Better guys, the core guys, keep them clustered so they can kind of move through the system together and experience winning together, whether that's a playoff series, a league championship.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, I like that approach as well, but that also kind of puts the impetus then on, then produce.
Yes.
And sometimes, I think we saw it maybe, I saw it in previous years. Maybe, I don't know if it's, I still haven't really kind of decided if it's the case this year or not. I think with Altoona it was the case because they had a lot of extenuating circumstances. But sometimes you see guys get caught up in that, trying to get to the majors or trying to the individual stuff, and it kind of falls apart a little bit team wise. This year, like Altoona, everybody was freaking hurt.
Yeah.
Gorski was hurt, and Davis, Hank Davis was hurt, and Gonzalez was hurt. Their pitcher, Priester started the year on the IL. So they had a lot of guys dinged up and nicked up. I don't know how many, maybe a handful of times they had everybody back in the lineup, and it was good. But it was kind of a herky-jerky kind of year in a lot of ways. And I think just, if some of that, the moving guys through and having them stay together and be successful together, it just wasn't, it's a good plan, but the circumstances kind of, prevented it from happening this year. You wonder where do you go from there now? A lot of those guys, I would assume, would be up at Indy next year, AAA. Yeah. A couple of them I think we're going to see in Pittsburgh. I think a guy like Andy Rodriguez, wow. Yeah. I've been told he's on the Pirates' internal depth chart.
Yeah.
He is ahead of Henry Davis now. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean necessarily that everybody thinks Andy's going to have a bigger, better Hall of Fame career. It just means that he's tracking because some of it is Henry was hurt, and he was hurt last year too. Yeah. Andy has just been consistently good and hasn't been impeded by injuries or anything else. And, he's just tracking. His career arc has been smoother at this point. So we'll see how that ends up. I think it, could be a great problem for the Pirates in a couple of years if Hank and Andy are both there at the same time. Assuming they're both still with catcher too. But, yes, a lot of pluses from that season. I saw a lot of really good things. Ortiz had an eye-opening year. I think Peguero did pretty much what everybody expected Peguero to do. So we'll see if, next year everybody will be a step closer, and we'll still kind of be waiting for that window to open in Pittsburgh some decade.
Rob, the regular season should be actually over today. But because of the lockout, it'll end next week. So they'll end up playing 162. Mm-hmm. I'm looking back on all this, Rob, and I'm seeing where the Pirates are, and I see, obviously, the haves with the money. Exactly what was accomplished by the lockout? I think, to a degree, I think that that the union had a chance, if it really would have hunkered down, to maybe enact some of the things that it wants. And it didn't. I've had players tell me that they thought guys caved too soon. I think the owners knew exactly what they were doing. They were going to lock them out and just let time be the decider in the whole thing. And it got to the point where players, you're not playing, you're not getting your paychecks, you're getting a little antsy. That part I understand. But tonight the Cincinnati Bengals will play the Miami Dolphins. Mm-hmm. The Bengals went from having the first overall pick in the draft and consistently drafting in the top 5 to the Super Bowl last year. That can't happen in Major League Baseball under the current system. And that's my point. What was accomplished with the lockout if you're not going to have competitive balance? I mean, don't players want to be seen in something that's exciting and in a pennant race?
I think, there's a lot to unpack there. I think some of it is baseball. You look at the ways baseball is changing. I think it's trying to make itself, or if not more popular, at least maintain its popularity. But it's going about it in ways that are like supposedly quick and easy fixes. Like, hey, pitch clock, no more shift.
Right.
Replay challenge. Instead of like just saying, you know what, there's this team in Pittsburgh that hasn't won since, I was in high school.
Yeah.
Or there's a team in Cleveland that hasn't won.
Right.
And although the Guardians are one of the great stories from this year winning that Central, but it was a pretty, let's face it, the AL Central's a pretty bad division.
It sure is.
So I think it's almost like pay no attention. It's like we say sometimes when we're sitting there at Pirates games, and you're watching the broadcast and they're talking about the minor leaguers or they're getting some food from one of the concession stands in Milwaukee or something, and it's like, pay no attention to that product on the field.
That's right. Right.
And I sometimes get the sense that's what baseball is doing. It's creating sideshows to, and I mean, I don't know, to a degree too, there's always been some disparity in the sport. I mean, the Yankees have been good forever. And, it was in 1960, it was like David and Goliath when the Pirates beat the Yankees. I mean, yes, it happened.
Yes.
But it was still you could argue it was kind of an aberration. I mean, and things haven't gotten better for competitive balance, but that's kind of like the way the game is. If you buy a major league team, if you own it, I mean, you got to understand the economics of the way things are run. So, either you work within that system and just accept the way things are, or you try to find ways that you can game that system and work around it and find your own advantages. And, some teams do that and a hell of a lot don't, because they still put a product in the field and it's still baseball and it's entertaining if you want to go out with the kids on a Thursday or Friday night in July, and that's that.
Again, but you have teams that don't want to do that. I mean, I would have sat there and it would have been shot down and said there'll be a floor of $100 million and a luxury tax and pick a number in the 200 somewhere, right? Yeah. That way it would appease the players on luxury tax because there's no cap. It's a luxury tax. Mm-hmm. And the floor would have forced them to spend money. But you have a block of teams, Pittsburgh among them, that won't do it. And again, it's you got to care about what you're doing here, and they don't care about that.
Yeah, and I just it's there are subsets within both sides there. I mean, the players, there's the upper echelon of guys, and then there's the vast middle class of players, and then there's the younger guys, and everybody is there's so many competing interests there that it's enough to keep just enough division for them not to be able to fully get behind something. And in the ownership side, it's the same thing. Yeah. Haves and have-nots, and there's just enough division there where they're never going to really, if you want to call it, reform the whole economic situation. And, I mean, I know it's frustrating to fans, and to a degree, I mean, I don't know what to tell them. I mean, you can create...
That's right. You can't. You don't know.
Create an artificial set up where everybody has, exactly $100 million to spend, and every player is a free agent after every year, and you decide how to do it. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, that itself would create its own kind of problems and circumstances, and I don't know. I just, I mean, it makes for good conversation with fans and something you can hope and wish and if pray, if you're so inclined, that things turn out well for your team. But I just don't know if I just sometimes wonder if there's like if you're making something that should be simple much more difficult than it has to be.
Mm-hmm. It's always great. It's always great talking with Rob. I mean, I could knock this around for 2 hours. So I mean, really, because it's I'm watching something I love baseball. And I'm just watching it, like, just slowly, like, a little part goes here and a little part goes there. And it's like, come on.
Yeah, I've been. This is my 28th season, and it's a lot different than it used to be, and it's frustrating and disappointing in a lot of ways. And I used to say, well, at least I have college football to go back to, that last pure bastion of amateur sports. Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Maybe not. Rob, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks. And really great work. It's not easy churning out the amount of material you do when you don't have a lot of material to work with yet. You found it. Yeah, you found it. So, which is great. So,
well, thanks, man. I will hopefully before this season's over, I'll pop over to your little outdoor broadcast and tap you on the shoulder and say hello.
Look forward to it. We're outside the tunnel now, by the way. So we moved. Rob, there you go. Thanks so much. Appreciate you, my man.
All right, Steve. Take care, man.